Beneath layers of stone and ice lie stories stranger than any myth. Cavemen caught in their final horrific moments, their deaths preserved in fossils, like snapshots of nightmares. These are not tales of glory, but of terror. Hunters trampled into the earth, swallowed by tar, frozen mid-stride, torn apart by beasts, and buried alive by the very caves they trusted. What you're about to witness are the most bizarre deaths etched into ancient bones, where every fossil whispers the brutal truth of how fragile survival truly was. Imagine stumbling upon the remains of a prehistoric man, his bones twisted and flattened as though the earth itself had swallowed him whole. But the truth was far more terrifying. The fossilized imprint told the story of a caveman who met his end beneath the thunderous weight of a mammoth stampede. The moment you picture it, the ground begins to shake in your mind. A dozen colossal beasts, each weighing over 6 tons, charging across the plains in a frenzy. The caveman would have heard the rumble long before he saw them, a vibration in the soil, like the drumbeat of an angry god. By the time he looked up, by the time he realized what was coming, there was no chance to run. Fossil evidence has revealed scenes just like this. Human and animal remains intertwined, bones crushed into the soil together, forever frozen in a moment of violent chaos. For the caveman, one misstep may have been all it took. Perhaps he was stalking the herd with his tribe, hungry and desperate for meat, thinking himself the predator. But mammoths were not just prey. They were mountains on legs, easily spooked, capable of turning the hunters into the hunted in a matter of seconds. The stampede would have started with a single alarm bellow, the lead beast raising its tusks before the rest followed suit. Panic spread like fire, and what followed was a wall of flesh and ivory that no man could hope to withstand. As the herd thundered past, his screams would have been drowned beneath the roars of the animals and the cracking of branches underfoot. A single blow from a massive foot could shatter a skull or ribcage instantly, but the full force of a charging herd was merciless. When the dust settled, silence returned to the plains, broken only by the fading echoes of the mammoths disappearing into the distance. What remained behind was not a man, but a broken imprint of one, pressed into the earth as if nature itself had carved his defeat into stone. Thousands of years later, when scientists uncovered the fossil, they didn't just find bones. They found a story of primal terror, a glimpse into the brutal reality of survival. One man's attempted glory ended in a death so bizarre that even in stone, you can almost feel the tremor of the mammoths still running. Picture a figure thrashing in slow motion, every desperate movement dragging him deeper instead of pulling him free. His arms claw at the surface, but the ground is no ground at all. It is a pit of black tar, sticky and endless, swallowing him inch by inch. Fossils unearthed thousands of years later reveal this exact fate. A caveman locked forever in the grip of nature's cruelest trap. His bones, preserved alongside the remains of animals that met the same doom, tell a chilling story of struggle, panic, and silence. Tar pits were death disguised as solid earth. From a distance, they looked like shallow pools, glistening harmlessly under the sun. But to the unsuspecting hunter who stepped too close, they became a nightmare with no escape. Imagine his foot sinking just slightly at first. He tries to pull it free, only to feel the tar grip tighter, wrapping around him like a living thing. With each attempt, he is drawn lower, his legs glued, his body dragged down. Fear sets in as he realizes he isn't standing on earth anymore. He's caught in its jaws. The more he struggled, the deeper he sank. His tribe may have watched from the edges, helpless, their spears useless against a trap that swallowed whole mammoths. Every shout, every plea, would have been smothered by the thick, bubbling mire. Birds circling overhead would have witnessed the final movements of a man consumed not by predator or storm, but by the earth itself. Tar offered no mercy. It waited, patient and quiet, until only his face remained above the surface. Then, slowly, it closed over him, leaving nothing but ripples and silence. Thousands of years later, His remains were discovered preserved in extraordinary detail, the tar holding bones, tools, even traces of hair and skin. Unlike the violent scatter of a predator's feast, his body was intact, caught mid-struggle, as though time had paused in that terrible instant. The caveman's last breath was sealed into the ground, waiting for us to uncover the story he could never tell. And that story is haunting. A reminder that not all deaths came with a roar or a strike of tusk or claw. Some came quietly, with the slow pull of black earth, dragging man down into a pit from which not even time could release him. The wind cuts like knives, a howl across the Ice Age tundra that never stops, never softens. Imagine a caveman frozen mid-stride, his arm raised with a spear, eyes wide as though he still sees the prey that lured him into the storm. His body did not collapse in fire or blood, but in silence, swallowed by snow. When his fossilized remains were discovered, the position was unnatural, almost theatrical, locked in the moment the cold claimed him. His death was not quick, and the story carved into his bones reveals the terror of being hunted not by beast, but by the elements themselves. He would have felt the cold first in his fingers. The weapon he clutched became heavier with every heartbeat as the skin on his hands stiffened and cracked. Then came the numbness in his feet, the creeping realization that each step was slower than the last. The storm had come suddenly, as Ice Age storms often did, walls of snow descending without warning. The prey he was stalking vanished into the white void, leaving him blind, disoriented, surrounded by nothing but endless whiteness. What had begun as a hunt turned into a desperate attempt to find shelter. The snow thickened around his legs, rising like a trap that pulled him lower with every breath. His lungs burned as the air grew thin, each inhale filled with shards of ice. Panic must have clawed at his mind. He was strong. He was a hunter, but even strength meant nothing against the weight of the cold. His tribe, if they were near, were already swallowed by the storm's wall. He was alone, a shadow staggering in a blizzard that erased all signs of life. When he finally collapsed, the snow did not relent. It covered him slowly, blanketing him in silence until his body disappeared completely. Time did the rest. Thousands of years later, when explorers uncovered his remains, they found him preserved almost perfectly. Bones still curled in that last futile attempt to rise. Even fragments of clothing clung to him, frozen relics of his final struggle. The fossil is more than a body. It is a snapshot of despair, of a man who froze mid-hunt, mid-life, erased by the Ice Age itself. His silence has lasted millennia, but the way his form lies preserved tells a story louder than words. In the battle between man and nature, the storm always wins. Teeth like daggers glint in the moonlight, eyes burning with the hunger of a predator that ruled before fire truly protected man. Imagine stumbling upon a fossil where human bones and saber-toothed cat remains are locked together, jaws pressed into ribs, claws still curved as though the hunt never ended. It is not just a skeleton, it is a frozen scream, the final proof of a caveman devoured alive in a world where he was never the apex predator. The attack would have been sudden. The caveman might have been crouched by a fire or stalking smaller prey when the silence of the night was shattered by the low growl of something watching from the darkness. His heart would have hammered before his feet even moved. The saber-tooth was patient, built for ambush, its muscular body sliding through grass and shadow. When it struck, it was with the speed of a nightmare, hundreds of pounds slamming into him, claws tearing into flesh before he could even raise his weapon. Every struggle only made the cat's grip tighter. Fossil marks on ancient bones reveal punctures in the skull, ribs crushed inward, as though the predator had pinned its prey and delivered blow after blow. The caveman may have screamed, but the sound would have been muffled beneath the snarls of the beast. Blood spilled into the dirt, steam rising in the cold air as his life poured out. His spear, if he had one, likely snapped beneath the sheer weight of the cat's body. And yet, these hunts were not always clean. Saber-Toothed often began feeding before their prey had died, tearing muscle from bone while the victims still gasped for air. The fossil evidence suggests this fate. Bones gnawed unevenly, scattered as though the man's body was consumed piece by piece while his heart still beat. For the tribe, returning to find the remains, there would be nothing but silence and fragments, the fire long dead, the man erased except for what the earth would one day reveal. Thousands of years later, we find the evidence sealed in stone, proof of a world where men were prey, where survival meant existing in a shadow of beasts designed to kill. The fossil does not lie. It shows us that sometimes death was not an ending, but a feast. The cave was meant to be a sanctuary, a shield against the storms, a fortress from predators, a place where firelight pushed back the darkness. But sometimes the earth itself betrays. Imagine walking into a cavern where human fossils lie crushed beneath slabs of stone, their final positions twisted as though they were reaching upward, clawing at the air, trying to escape the collapse that buried them alive. It is not merely a grave. It is a tomb carved by nature, sealing its victims in silence for tens of thousands of years. The night of their death would have begun like any other. The fire crackled, shadows danced across rough walls, and the tribe huddled close, their voices echoing in the chamber. Perhaps the weight of dripping water had weakened the stone above. Perhaps the vibrations of a distant quake ran through the earth like a warning. Whatever the cause, the first crack would have sounded like a gunshot in the stillness. Heads turned upward, eyes widening. Just before the ceiling came down, there was no time to flee. Massive rocks plummeted in an instant, smashing bone and extinguishing flame. The air filled with dust, choking lungs, turning every breath into a struggle. Screams were cut short beneath the thunder of falling stone. Some may have survived the first crash, pinned beneath rubble, their hearts racing in the pitch black as more debris rained down. Hands scraped against the rock, searching for a way out, leaving bloody marks that would fossilize into whispers of desperation. The fire was smothered, plunging them into a suffocating darkness where hours stretched into eternity. Those still alive would have felt the air grow heavy, each inhale thinner than the last. The collapse had sealed them in, a chamber of stone that turned into a coffin. Silence followed, absolute and eternal, broken only by the settling groans of the cave as it buried its secrets. When their remains were finally uncovered millennia later, the story was unmistakable. Fossilized bones lay tangled with rubble, tools crushed flat, even fragments of ash still lingering where the fire once burned. The cave had kept them exactly as they fell, preserving the moment of betrayal when their refuge became their killer. The fossils remind us that in the ancient world, death did not always come from predator or storm. Sometimes, it was the very shelter man trusted most that sealed him in his final resting place, stone by stone, breath by breath, until nothing remained but silence.